The massive arena stretched across 3 kilometers of polished metal flooring, its walls rising into darkness where thousands of alien spectators watched from tiered seating. Commander Zexhai of the Corvani Empire stood at the center, his 4 arms crossed in a display of supreme confidence. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh arena lights, each plate reinforced with quantum steel that could deflect plasma rounds. At nearly 3 meters tall, he towered over most species in the galaxy. Today marked the 15th cycle since the Galactic Council had discovered humanity's small blue planet tucked away in what they considered the galactic backwater. Earth's representatives had been invited to participate in the traditional combat trials, a series of contests designed to determine a species' worthiness for full membership in the galactic community. So far, 23 different human volunteers had stepped into various arenas across Council space. 23 had been defeated, some barely surviving the encounters. The crowd murmured in a dozen alien languages as the latest human representative was announced. Zexhai had reviewed the files on this species called humans. They were remarkably weak by galactic standards. No natural armor, no enhanced strength, no energy weapons growing from their bodies like the plasmari. They couldn't even survive in hard vacuum for more than a few minutes, unlike his own people who could endure the cold of space for hours. Yet something about these creatures puzzled the commander. Despite their obvious physical limitations, they had somehow developed faster-than-light travel and had even managed to colonize several worlds in their local system. Their technology was crude but functional, like everything else about them. Zexhai had seen their weapons, basic projectile firearms that fired small metal slugs. Primitive compared to his own plasma rifle that could melt through ship hulls. The arena's central platform activated, and a shimmering blue field descended from the ceiling. This energy barrier would contain the combat, preventing any stray weapons fire from reaching the spectators. More importantly, it would ensure that whoever lost this fight would not be walking away. The combat trials were not mere exhibitions. They were tests of survival, strength, and the will to dominate. Ambassador Kelthra of the Council stepped forward, her crystalline form refracting the arena lights into rainbow patterns. Her voice resonated through the arena's sound system, reaching every spectator in their native language through the universal translators. Citizens of the galaxy, we gather once more to witness the combat trials. Today, Commander Zexhai of the Corvani Empire, victor of 47 arena battles, defender of 3 star systems, will face humanity's chosen representative, Zexhai. Flexed his 4 arms, each one capable of crushing steel. His people had evolved on a high-gravity world where every day was a battle against crushing atmospheric pressure and predators that could tear through reinforced shelters. He had personally led charges against enemy positions, his exoskeleton deflecting energy blasts while he carved through opposing forces with weapons that few species could even lift. "The human challenger approaches," Kelthra announced, from the opposite entrance. A figure emerged that caused ripples of confusion through the crowd. The human was smaller than even the previous representatives, barely reaching 2 meters in height. Unlike the others who had worn various forms of technological armor, this one wore simple camouflage clothing and carried what appeared to be an ancient projectile weapon. His hair was cut short, his posture relaxed but alert. Zexhai studied his opponent with growing amusement. The human's weapon looked like something from a museum, a metal tube with wooden furniture that belonged in the primitive sections of galactic history displays. No energy cells, no plasma conduits, no gravitational field generators. Just basic chemistry and metal? "State your designation, human," Zexhai called out, his voice amplified by his suit's external speakers. "Staff Sergeant Marcus Chun, United States Marine Corps," the human replied simply. Several aliens in the crowd chittered with what passed for laughter among their species. The previous human representatives had at least attempted to explain their credentials, listing technological achievements or tactical victories. This one simply stated a rank and an organization that meant nothing to the galactic community. Zexhai's mandibles clicked in amusement. "I have studied your species' combat records. Marcus Chen of the Marine Corps, your people fight with projectile weapons and chemical explosives. You have no energy shields, no gravitational manipulation, no molecular disruptors. Tell me, little human, how do you expect to defeat someone who has conquered entire solar systems? Marcus checked his rifle with practiced efficiency, running his hands over the weapon like it was an extension of his body. When he looked up at Zexai, his eyes held no fear, no uncertainty. Only the calm focus of someone who had faced death before and walked away. Commander, you've been fighting other species that rely on technology to make them strong, Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly across the arena. But you've never fought someone who was born in conflict, raised in war, and trained to win no matter what the odds. The crowd fell silent. Even the most bloodthirsty species recognized the tone in the human's voice. It was not boasting or false bravado. It was the quiet confidence of someone stating a simple fact. Zexai's amusement began to fade as he noticed something in the human's stance. Despite holding a primitive weapon and wearing no visible armor, Marcus moved with the fluid grace of a predator. His eyes constantly scanned the arena, noting sightlines, potential cover, distances, and angles. This was not the behavior of prey trying to survive. This was a hunter evaluating his hunting ground. Your weapon cannot penetrate my armor, human, Zexai stated, though with less certainty than before. My exoskeleton has deflected plasma bolts that could vaporize your entire body. Marcus smiled. And somehow that expression was more unsettling than any battle cry. Commander, you're making the same mistake that a lot of people have made when they underestimated Marines. You're thinking about what my weapon can't do instead of what I can do with it. Ambassador Kelthera raised her hand, the signal for combat to begin. Around the arena, thousands of alien spectators leaned forward in anticipation. Most expected this to be over quickly, another demonstration of humanity's inadequacy. But something in the human's demeanor suggested this fight might be different. As the barrier sealed completely around the combat zone, Marcus Chun did something that surprised everyone present. Instead of immediately taking aim or seeking cover, he began to walk steadily toward the massive alien warrior, his rifle held at ready position but not yet raised to fire. Zexai hesitated for just a moment, confused by this unexpected tactic. In that moment of uncertainty, he began to understand that perhaps he had underestimated more than just the human's weapon. The arena erupted in confused murmurs as Marcus continued his steady advance toward Zexai. No previous combatant had ever walked directly toward the Corvani commander. Most sought cover behind the scattered obstacles placed throughout the arena, or attempted to gain distance to utilize long-range weapons. This human was doing neither. HAI raised his primary weapon, a plasma rifle that glowed with contained energy. The weapon had been forged on the war worlds of his empire, designed to punch through vehicle armor and reduce enemy positions to molten slag. At this range, a single shot would completely vaporize the approaching human. Stop your advance, human, or I will fire, Zexai commanded. Though something in Marcus's unwavering approach made him hesitate to pull the trigger immediately, Marcus continued walking, his eyes never leaving Zexai's form. His rifle remained in a ready position but still not aimed directly at his opponent. To the watching aliens, it appeared that the human was committing an elaborate form of suicide, walking into certain death with no apparent strategy. Your weapon has a charge cycle of approximately 2.3 seconds between shots, Marcus called out conversationally as if discussing the weather. Maximum effective range against hardened targets is roughly 800 meters, but accuracy drops significantly beyond 600 due to plasma dispersal. Zexai's mandibles clicked in surprise. How could this primitive human know the specifications of advanced Corvani weaponry? The information was restricted to military personnel and weapons manufacturers. I've studied every piece of footage from your previous arena fights. Commander, Marcus continued, still walking steadily forward. 47 victories, impressive record. But I noticed something interesting about your combat style. You rely heavily on your armor and weapons technology, which makes sense given your natural advantages. Now Zexai was truly concerned. No opponent had ever analyzed his fighting patterns before engaging in combat. Most were too terrified or too aggressive to think strategically. But this human was treating their deathmatch like a tactical briefing. However, Marcus continued, now within 400 meters, relying on superior technology creates predictable patterns. You favor your primary weapon for initial strikes, then switch to your secondary plasma caster for close-range work? When opponents close to melee distance, you use your forearms and superior strength to overpower them. The crowd had fallen completely silent now, hanging on every word. Even Ambassador Kelthra was watching with intense interest, her crystalline form pulsing with colors that indicated deep thought. HFY finally triggered his plasma rifle. The weapon discharged with a brilliant flash that lit up the entire arena, sending a bolt of superheated energy directly at Marcus's position. But the human was no longer there. In the instant before the weapon fired, Marcus had thrown himself sideways into a combat roll, his body moving with practiced precision. The plasma bolt struck the arena floor where he had been standing, leaving a crater of melted metal 3 meters across. Before HFY could process what had happened, Marcus was back on his feet and moving again, but now his path was no longer direct. He weaved between arena obstacles with fluid grace, using every piece of cover available while continuing his advance. HFY fired again, and again Marcus anticipated the shot, diving behind a reinforced barrier as superheated plasma scorched the air above him. The Corvani commander was beginning to feel something he had not experienced in decades of combat: uncertainty. 2 shots fired, Commander, Marcus called out from behind cover. At standard combat rates, your weapon should be running low on power cells. Unless you're carrying extra equipment, you've got maybe 6 more shots before you need to reload. This was impossible. How could a primitive human understand Corvani military equipment better than some of his own soldiers? HFY checked his weapon's power level and cursed in his native language. The human was correct. His rifle showed 7 shots remaining. Marcus emerged from cover, but instead of continuing towards HFY, he began moving laterally, forcing the commander to track his movement. The human's rifle was now raised and ready, though he still had not fired a single shot. The thing about energy weapons, Marcus continued, his voice steady despite the deadly game of cat and mouse, is that they're designed for overwhelming firepower against similarly advanced opponents. They're not optimized for hunting something small, fast, and difficult to track. HFY fired 3 quick shots in succession, trying to pin down his elusive opponent. Each blast missed by mere meters as Marcus flowed between cover points like water finding cracks in stone. The human's movement was unlike anything the commander had seen before. It was not the desperate scrambling of prey, but the calculated positioning of a predator setting up for an attack. 6 shots down, 2 remaining, Marcus announced, and HFY realized with growing alarm that the human had been counting every discharge. Now, Marcus changed his pattern again, moving directly towards HFY, but using a zigzag approach that made targeting extremely difficult. The Corvani commander found himself turning constantly, trying to keep his weapon lined up on a target that seemed to anticipate every move. You want to know the real difference between human warfare and galactic combat, Commander? Marcus called out as he closed the distance. Every other species you've fought has been trying to match your firepower with their own technology. They've been playing your game by your rules? HFY fired his 7th shot. The plasma bolt passed so close to Marcus that it singed the fabric of his uniform, but the human kept coming. But humans learned a long time ago that you don't always fight fire with fire, Marcus continued. Sometimes you fight fire with water. Sometimes you fight technology with tactics. And sometimes you fight superior firepower with superior training. 1 shot left. HFY's hands trembled slightly as he aimed his weapon, trying to line up a perfect shot on his rapidly approaching opponent. But Marcus was now close enough that the commander could see his eyes, and what he saw there made his blood run cold. Marcus was not afraid. He was not desperate. He was completely, utterly calm, like someone who had already calculated every possible outcome and found them all acceptable. Last shot, Commander, Marcus said quietly, now within 50 meters. Make it count. HFY pulled the trigger, putting everything he had into this final plasma discharge. The bolt screamed across the arena, aimed perfectly at Marcus's center mass dot, but in the split second between trigger pull and impact, Marcus did something that no galactic warrior had ever attempted against the plasma weapon. Instead of dodging away from the shot, he dropped flat to the arena floor, sliding forward on his stomach while the energy blast passed harmlessly over his head. The momentum of his slide carried him directly to Zexai's feet, and for the first time in the entire engagement, Marcus raised his rifle and took aim. Zexai stared down at the human who had somehow materialized at his feet. The primitive projectile weapon now aimed directly upward at the junction where his helmet met his neck armor. For the first time in his military career, the Corvani commander found himself looking into the business end of an enemy weapon with no ability to respond. His plasma rifle was depleted. His secondary weapons were designed for medium-range engagement, and his opponent was positioned in the one spot where his massive frame and armor worked against him. To bring any weapon to bear on Marcus, he would have to step backward, giving the human time to fire first. "Impossible," Zexai whispered. His voice barely audible even through his suit's amplification system, Marcus remained prone on the arena floor, his rifle steady as a rock despite having just completed a combat slide across polished metal. His breathing was controlled, his stance perfect, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. Every aspect of his positioning spoke of countless hours of training. Endless repetition until these movements became as natural as breathing. "This is the part where most species would demand surrender," Marcus said calmly, never taking his eyes off his target. "But I think you and I both know this arena doesn't work that way." The crowd was completely silent now. Thousands of alien spectators leaned forward, straining to understand how the situation had reversed so completely. Minutes ago, the human had appeared to be walking to his death. Now, the supposedly primitive warrior held the initiative while the galactic champion stood helpless. Zexai's forearms twitched as he considered his options. His combat training told him to strike with his superior strength, to use his natural advantages to overpower this small opponent. But something in the human's demeanor warned him that movement would be a mistake. "You are bluffing," Zexai declared, though his voice carried none of his earlier confidence. "Your weapon cannot penetrate my armor. I have deflected plasma bolts that carry 1,000 times more energy than your primitive projectiles." Marcus smiled, and once again that expression seemed more threatening than any battle cry. "Commander, you're still thinking in terms of energy output and penetration power. That's not how this works." The human's rifle remained perfectly steady, aimed at the narrow gap where Zexai's helmet ceiling met his neck armor. It was the one spot on the entire suit where flexibility requirements had forced the designers to compromise protection. "Every piece of armor has weak points," Marcus continued in that same conversational tone. "Joints, seals, interfaces between different protective systems. The trick is not having enough power to blast through the armor. The trick is knowing exactly where to place your shot." Zexai felt a chill of understanding. The human had not been walking randomly forward during their initial engagement. He had been studying the Corvani armor, noting every joint, every seam, every potential vulnerability. While Zexai had been focused on demonstrating his superior firepower, Marcus had been conducting a detailed reconnaissance of his target. "Your people learned warfare from fighting other species with similar technology," Marcus explained. "Energy weapons against energy shields, plasma bolts against reactive armor. You've been fighting opponents who tried to match your firepower with their own advanced systems." The human's voice took on an edge that made several aliens in the front rows unconsciously lean away from the arena barrier. "But humans learned to fight by killing each other. For thousands of years, we developed tactics not against alien technology, but against other humans who were just as clever, just as determined, and just as willing to die as we were." Zexai began to understand the true scope of his mistake. He had prepared to fight another galactic species with their predictable reliance on technological superiority. Instead, he was facing something entirely different. A warrior shaped by millennia of conflicts where survival depended on outthinking opponents with equivalent capabilities. Every human soldier learns to study their enemy, Marcus continued. We learn to find weaknesses, to exploit vulnerabilities, to turn superior strength against itself. We've been doing this since we were fighting with sharpened sticks and rocks. The Corvani commander's mandibles clicked nervously. His weapons were depleted, his opponent held perfect positioning, and any movement on his part would trigger an engagement at point-blank range where his armor advantages meant nothing. "This is still not over, human," Zexhai growled. "Even if your weapon can find a weakness in my armor, I possess 4 times your strength. I can tear you apart with my bare hands." Marcus nodded as if this was a perfectly reasonable point. "You're absolutely right, Commander. In close combat, you would probably win. Your reach is longer, your strength is greater, and your natural weapons are more dangerous than anything I'm carrying." For a moment, hope flickered in Zexhai's compound eyes. "But here's what you're missing," Marcus continued. "I don't have to fight fair." Before Zexhai could process this statement, Marcus fired 3 shots in rapid succession. The projectiles struck not at the commander's armor weak points, but at the arena floor directly beneath his feet. The high-velocity rounds shattered the polished metal surface, creating a spider web of cracks that spread outward from the impact points. Zexhai's massive frame, designed for high-gravity environments and heavy combat loads, proved to be a disadvantage as the weakened floor gave way beneath his weight. He dropped several inches as his feet punched through the damaged surface, throwing off his balance and limiting his mobility. In the same instant, Marcus rolled sideways and came up in a new firing position. His rifle now aimed at the power coupling for Zexhai's secondary weapon system. Another precisely placed shot severed the energy conduit, causing the commander's backup weapons to shut down in a cascade of sparks. "Humans have a saying," Marcus called out as he moved to a third position, keeping mobile while Zexhai struggled to free his feet from the broken floor. "If you're in a fair fight, you've made a tactical error." The arena crowd erupted in sounds of amazement and fusion as they watched the massive Galactic champion reduced to flailing helplessly while the small human continued to systematically dismantle his advantages. Marcus fired 2 more shots, these aimed at the hydraulic systems that powered Zexhai's armor servos. The projectiles found their marks with surgical precision, and the commander's enhanced strength systems began shutting down as vital fluids leaked from severed lines. "Every weakness you've shown me, I've cataloged," Marcus explained, circling his increasingly immobilized opponent. "Every system dependency, every structural limitation, every point of failure. This isn't about having better weapons, Commander. This is about knowing how to use the weapons you have." Zexhai finally managed to pull 1 foot free from the damaged floor, but his armor systems were failing rapidly. Warning signals flashed across his helmet display as power levels dropped and hydraulic pressure fell to critical levels. "You fought like a soldier, Commander," Marcus said, his voice now carrying what almost sounded like respect. "But I learned to fight like a Marine." Zexhai stood trapped in the center of the arena, his once mighty powered armor now nothing more than an elaborate prison. Hydraulic fluid pooled around his feet where Marcus's precisely aimed shots had severed critical systems. His weapons were dead, his enhanced strength was failing, and his mobility was severely compromised by the damaged floor beneath him. Yet the human had not delivered a killing shot. Marcus maintained his firing position, rifle trained on his opponent, but he had not pressed his advantage to its logical conclusion. In any other arena combat, the battle would have been over the moment one fighter gained such complete tactical superiority. "Why do you hesitate, human?" Zexhai demanded, his voice distorted by failing audio systems. "Finish what you have started. Take your victory." Marcus studied the disabled Corvani commander for a long moment before responding. "Because this wasn't really about defeating you, Commander. This was about proving a point." The arena crowd murmured with confusion. Several species began agitated discussions in their native languages, trying to understand why the human was not claiming his obvious victory. The combat trials are supposed to test a species' worthiness for membership in the galactic community, Marcus continued. His weapons still ready, but not immediately threatening. Every human representative who came before me tried to prove our worth by matching galactic standards. They brought advanced armor, energy weapons, technological enhancements, and they all lost. Zexhias' mandibles clicked with growing comprehension. You deliberately chose primitive equipment. Not primitive, Marcus corrected. Practical. Every piece of gear I'm carrying has been tested in hundreds of conflicts across dozens of different environments. My rifle has been in continuous production for over 50 years because it works reliably under conditions that would shut down more sophisticated systems. The human gestured towards Zexhias' disabled armor. Your equipment is impressive, Commander, but it's also complex. Complex systems have complex failure modes. When your power coupling was severed, your entire weapons array went offline. When your hydraulics failed, you lost most of your enhanced capabilities. Marcus began walking slowly around his trapped opponent, though his rifle never wavered from its target. Human military doctrine teaches us to assume that our equipment will fail at the worst possible moment. So we train to fight with backup systems, improvised weapons, and pure tactical thinking. Then why have you not claimed victory? Zexhi asked, though his voice now carried curiosity rather than challenge. Because the real test isn't whether humanity can win a fight, Marcus replied. The real test is whether we belong in a community with other intelligent species. And that requires more than just proving we can kill effectively. Ambassador Kalthra's crystalline form pulsed with intense colors as she processed this unexpected development. No combat trial in recorded history had proceeded like this. Winners claimed their victories and dominance was established. The human's behavior was unprecedented. Marcus lowered his rifle for the first time since gaining his advantage. Commander, I could end this fight right now. We both know that. But what would that prove? That humans are better killers than the galaxy expects? That's not the message my species wants to send. Zexhi struggled against his disabled armor, finally managing to activate his helmet's emergency release. The armored headpiece hissed open, revealing his natural features for the first time. His compound eyes fixed on Marcus with an expression that might have been respect. What message do you wish to send, Marcus Chun of the Marine Corps? Marcus slung his rifle across his back and stepped forward until he was within arm's reach of the disabled Corvani. That humans fight when we have to, but we prefer to find solutions that don't require anyone to die. The human extended his hand toward Zexhi. And after a moment's hesitation, the commander reached out with one of his forearms to accept the gesture. Help me understand your tactics, Marcus said. Show me how Corvani forces coordinate their assaults. Teach me about energy weapon applications that my people haven't considered. Share your knowledge of galactic combat doctrine. Zexhi stared at the offered hand, then looked up at Marcus's face. You would learn from someone you have defeated? Commander, you've won 47 arena battles against the finest warriors in the galaxy. I may have found a way to counter your specific advantages in this particular environment, but that doesn't mean I can't learn from your experience. Marcus helped Zexhi step out of the broken floor sections, supporting the commander as his armor systems gradually shut down completely. Besides, this fight isn't really over yet, explain. Marcus glanced toward the arena barriers where thousands of alien spectators watched in stunned silence. You and I are both professional soldiers, Commander. We understand that real threats don't come from honorable opponents who fight fair. Real threats come from enemies who use overwhelming force, surprise attacks, and asymmetric tactics. The human's expression became serious as he continued. I've been studying the galactic political situation since humanity was contacted. There are species out there that view the combat trials as a way to identify and eliminate potential threats before they become established. Some of your enemies are probably watching this right now, taking notes on both our capabilities. Zexhias' mandibles clicked with understanding. You suggest an alliance? I suggest we stop fighting each other and start preparing for the fights that actually matter, Marcus replied. Human tactical innovation combined with Corvani. Equipment and experience could create something unprecedented in galactic warfare. The commander looked around the arena, noting the alien spectators, the recording devices, the political implications of this moment. The Council will not accept such an outcome. The trials demand a victor. Marcus smiled and raised his voice so it would carry clearly through the arena's sound system. Then let's give them one they won't forget. The human turned toward Ambassador Kelthera and the assembled crowd. Ambassador, I formally request that this combat trial be declared a tactical demonstration rather than a victory contest. Commander HFY and I have just proven that cooperation between species can achieve results that neither could accomplish alone. This is not how the trials function, Kelthera responded, her crystalline form flashing with colors indicating confusion and concern. Then maybe it's time to change how they function, Marcus replied. Humanity requests permission to establish joint training exercises with willing galactic military forces. We offer to share our tactical doctrines in exchange for access to advanced galactic technology and strategic knowledge. HFY straightened as much as his failing armor would allow, his voice carrying across the arena as he addressed the council representative. The Kovani Empire seconds this proposal. This human has demonstrated capabilities that could benefit all member species facing external threats. The arena erupted in dozens of different alien languages as species representatives began urgent discussions. This was not the outcome anyone had expected, but the implications were impossible to ignore. Marcus had turned a contest of individual strength into a demonstration of collaborative potential, and in doing so had changed the nature of humanity's relationship with the galactic community entirely. The emergency council session convened 6 hours after the unprecedented arena demonstration. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the massive chamber aboard Council Station Nexus, their voices creating a cacophony of debate that the universal translator struggled to process. Simultaneously, Ambassador Kelthera stood at the central podium, her crystalline form cycling through rapid color changes that indicated deep stress. Never in the 1,000-year history of the combat trials had a challenger requested to transform victory into partnership. The legal and political implications were staggering. "Order!" Kelthera called out, her voice resonating through the chamber. "We must address the situation that has developed in Arena 7. High Chancellor Vorthak of the Hierarchy leaned forward in his floating suspension pod, his tentacles writhing with agitation. The human's actions are a clear violation of trial protocols. He achieved tactical superiority and failed to claim victory. This invalidates the entire proceeding." "With respect, Chancellor," came a voice from the Corvani delegation. Commander HFY had been granted emergency speaking privileges despite his recent defeat. The human demonstrated capabilities that exceed simple combat prowess. His tactical analysis and strategic thinking represent assets that could benefit the entire galactic community. Murmurs of agreement arose from several delegations, but they were quickly drowned out by objections from others. The Void Hunter's representative, a massive arthropod whose species had conquered 12 star systems through pure military might, clicked his mandibles dismissively. "Weakness disguised as diplomacy," the Void Hunter declared. This human had the opportunity to prove his species' dominance and chose, instead, to reveal their tactics to potential enemies. Such behavior demonstrates why humanity remains unfit for council membership. From the observation gallery, Marcus watched the proceedings with growing concern. He had requested permission to address the council directly, but his status as a non-member species representative left him with limited rights in formal sessions. Beside him sat Dr. Sarah Martinez, Earth's chief diplomatic attaché, her face tight with worry. "Marcus, I have to ask, did you plan this outcome from the beginning?" "Honestly?" "No," Marcus replied quietly. "I planned to win the fight and prove that humans could hold their own against galactic military forces. But when I saw how completely I had disabled Commander HFY's capabilities, continuing to the logical conclusion felt like missing the bigger picture." Dr. Martinez nodded slowly. "The bigger picture being that we need allies more than we need to prove we can fight." Exactly. Earth has maybe a dozen colony worlds and a population of 15 billion people. The galaxy has thousands of species with billions of inhabited planets. We can either spend the next century trying to prove we're strong enough to survive alone, or we can start building relationships that make survival irrelevant because we're part of something larger. Down in the council chamber, Admiral Keshrin of the Stellar Federation had taken the floor. Her species, the Nithians, were among the few that had maintained neutrality in most galactic conflicts, preferring to serve as mediators and peacekeepers. Honored representatives, Admiral Keshrin began, her four vocal cords creating harmonic overtones that the translators rendered as unusual emphasis. Perhaps we are approaching this situation from the wrong perspective. The humans' actions were unprecedented, yes, but they were not necessarily inappropriate. She gestured toward a holographic display that showed tactical readouts from the arena combat. Analysis of the engagement reveals several significant developments. First, the human demonstrated the ability to analyze and counter advanced galactic military systems, using what we have classified as primitive technology. Second, he showed restraint and strategic thinking under combat conditions that typically produce only aggression and desperation. The display shifted to show Marcus's weapon specifications alongside Zexhi's armor capabilities. Most importantly, he achieved total tactical dominance while minimizing actual damage to his opponent. In conflicts involving member species, such restraint could prevent unnecessary casualties and reduce post-conflict rehabilitation costs. Chancellor Vorthak's tentacles lashed in frustration. Admiral, you speak of restraint as if it were a military virtue. Restraint in combat leads to defeat. Mercy toward enemies ensures they will return to fight again. Does it? Admiral Keshrin asked quietly. Commander Zexhi, you have extensive combat experience against numerous species. In your professional opinion, would you consider Staff Sergeant Marcus Chun to be more or less dangerous as an enemy now than before your engagement? Zexhi stood, his damaged armor replaced with a simple uniform that nonetheless carried his rank insignia and service decorations. Admiral, I would consider him far more dangerous. But more significantly, I would prefer to have him as an ally rather than face him as an enemy. The Corvani commander's statement sent ripples of discussion through the chamber. His defeat had been broadcast across the galaxy, witnessed by military analysts and political leaders of every major species. His endorsement of the humans' capabilities carried considerable weight. Explain your reasoning, Admiral Keshrin requested. The humans' tactics were unlike anything in our military databases, Zexhi replied. He did not attempt to match our technological capabilities or rely on superior equipment. Instead, he used analytical skills and tactical flexibility to turn our own advantages against us. Such thinking could revolutionize galactic military doctrine. High Chancellor Vorthak made a sound that the translators rendered as contemptuous laughter. You would have us learn tactics from a species that has not even achieved interstellar dominance in their own local space. With respect, Chancellor, Zexhi replied, humanity achieved interstellar travel without conquering their neighbors, without enslaving other species, and without depleting their homeworld's resources through military expansion. Perhaps there are different forms of strength worth considering. From the human observation section, Dr. Martinez leaned toward Marcus. He's making a stronger case for us than our own diplomatic team managed in 3 years of negotiations. Marcus nodded. But his attention was focused on a section of the chamber where he had noticed unusual activity. Representatives from several species were engaged in urgent whispered communications, and their body language suggested they were not pleased with the direction of the debate. Sarah, Marcus said quietly, do we have any intelligence on which species have been most opposed to human membership in the Council? Dr. Martinez pulled up files on her tablet. The Void Hunters have been consistently hostile, along with the Hegemony and the Purification Coalition. They've blocked every proposal for advancing our status. Why? Marcus pointed toward the group he had been observing. Because those 3 delegations are coordinating their responses. They're not just debating our membership anymore. They're planning something. As if responding to his observation, the Void Hunter representative rose from his seat and demanded recognition from Ambassador Kelthera. The Void Hunter's request immediate. Implementation of trial protocol? 7, the arthropod declared in a voice that carried no trace of uncertainty. The chamber fell silent. Even species that had been engaged in heated debate stopped their discussions to stare at the Void Hunter. Delegation. Ambassador Kelthera's crystalline form shifted to colors that indicated shock and concern. Representative K-Thresh, are you certain of this request? Protocol 7 has not been invoked in over 2 centuries. We are certain, K-Thresh replied. The humans' actions have invalidated the standard trial process. If humanity wishes to join the galactic community, they must face a true test of worthiness. We invoke the right of challenge. Dr. Martinez grabbed Marcus's arm, her face pale. Marcus, what's Protocol 7? Marcus was already pulling up galactic legal databases on his tablet, scanning through the relevant statutes. What he found made his blood run cold. It means they're not satisfied with one-on-one combat anymore, he said grimly. Protocol 7 allows any member species to demand a full military demonstration. Humanity versus whoever accepts the challenge, with membership status determined by the outcome. In the chamber below, K-Thresh was continuing his declaration. If the humans believe their tactical innovations make them worthy of council membership, let them prove it against a true galactic military force. The Void Hunters formally challenge humanity to planetary-scale combat exercises, with full membership granted to the victor. Marcus realized that his arena victory had not solved humanity's problems. It had escalated them to an entirely different level,